Well, welcome back to another episode of Marketing Girly by Sky Society. Today, I am so excited to be chatting with Alexa Gasbarrino. She is the Senior Product Marketing Manager at Sweetgreen. Welcome, Alexa.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for coming on. Very excited to kind of go through your career journey. Before we jump into all of that, can you tell me a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah. So my name is Alexa, not the Amazon Alexa. I currently work as a senior product marketing manager at Sweetgreen, as you said. So I currently work on all of our digital ordering channels. We have several ones, like inclusive of our first party delivery, third party delivery marketplace, our B2B channel, catering, all of that. Prior to Sweetgreen, I spent a very long time at Google, around 7.5 years, where I worked primarily as a Google Ads consultant, did a lot of like YouTube experimentation, did some cool rotations that we can speak about. And yeah, I'm located in New York, and yeah, I'm excited to talk to you today.
Yay, excited to jump in. Yeah, I saw that on your LinkedIn, Alexa, that you were at Google for 8 years, which is a very long time to be at one company. And also interesting switching from like tech over to Sweetgreen. I'm curious, so you said at Sweetgreen you manage the online ordering channel. So is that like if I go in the app and I order Sweetgreen online, or I go in DoorDash and order Sweetgreen online?
So both.
You know that? Okay.
We consider a digital ordering channel anyone that orders on like a third party marketplace. So that would be like the DoorDash use case. And then
Hmm.
anyone that orders on our app. So that would be
Okay.
like first party.
And as a product marketing manager, what exactly does that mean or can you explain a little bit kind of deeper as to like what your role looks like?
Yeah, of course. So I'm in charge of growing both engagement and usage on across all of these digital ordering channels. So we consider the way that you get your Sweetgreen as a product. Obviously, like our menu is our like main product, but the way that you actually get it to your doorstep is the addition, the product that I focus on. And so my role is to work very cross-functionally across product, tech, brand, kind of like every single function at Sweetgreen, to grow the channel from both a revenue and an engagement standpoint. So a lot of that means like what are some new like product features that we can come out with to make customers have like a more seamless experience like on our app. What are some levers that we can use to increase engagement? So is that like a promo, or can we do like any type of like product marketing campaign that talks about like the great benefit of ordering on our app or anything along those lines? And so it's a very, as I mentioned, very high like visibility role, like lots of cross-functional partners that you work with. And yeah, it's all about, you're essentially like the voice of the customer as a product marketer.
I love that analogy there. You're the voice of the customer. That's a really good way to put it. So this is a role that I'm starting to see more women in the Sky Society community kind of mention that they're potentially interested in going into product marketing. So can you maybe describe a little bit about, because we'll dive into Google and talk a little bit about how like your shift towards product marketing and how you ended up here, but what are maybe some, skills that are really that you use a lot within product marketing? How is it a little bit different than marketing? So if someone is like really interested in that role, what skills or qualities should they be looking to develop?
Yeah. So as a product marketer, you are like an octopus. I love that analogy because you basically have like your tentacles and many different like projects and many different work streams. So I think you need to be highly collaborative. You need to be very organized. A lot of times you are the person that are like is running the meetings, is running the projects, not like a project manager, but you are kind of like ensuring that everyone is like putting in like their updates in the deck. Everyone is like you're like the main point person for like a specific like product launch or product update. I think you also need to be very like data driven. You need to have like a good marriage of both like the left and the right brain, like art and science. So like, yes, you'll get like a spreadsheet with all of the results of a promotion, but then it's like, how can you then infer it? And what are some things then that you can then tell like the brand and the creative team to ensure that you're working on for like your next campaign? Like where were the gaps in the creative? Where were the gaps in like the social strategy? So you really do need to learn how to make inferences from data, but then be able to um, optimize like more qualitatively also, which I think is very important. You do need to be pretty technical and like understanding it. It does depend on like what product you're marketing. So anywhere from like a salad to a specific like CRM tool would determine like how technical you need to be. And then you also need to be a really good communicator. A lot of what you'll do is like sales enablement tools. So you really need to understand like what are the ways to like train the sales team, what are the like materials you need to send off to the sales team. So really, really good at like communicating and also writing.
Okay. That is, I think, one of the best overviews of a role I've gotten on the podcast. So thank you for that. You did a very good job of explaining that. And I hope people listening, if some of those things kind of resonate with you, then product marketing may be a good place to go. So we're going to rewind a little bit and going to talk about how you ended up here at Sweetgreen doing product marketing. So let's jump into Google really quick. So pretty much right out of college, you started at Google. Is that correct?
Yeah, I started in our Ann Arbor, Michigan office as an entry-level role, working with SMBs on their Google Ads, like literally calling them up and being like, these are things that you need to do to your Google Ads account.
So it was mostly a sales role then. Is that kind
Yeah.
of okay? So you studied marketing in college and then you got a sales role out of college. So talk to me, was that like a scary thing for you to do? Were you just like really looking to get your foot in the door at Google, or kind of why is that where you chose to start your career?
I was always under the thought, and this is something that my dad always told me, was like, in order to really understand marketing, like it's really important to get sales experience.
Mhm.
So I was looking for sales. I didn't want to stay in sales. I knew I didn't want to like have a sales quota my whole life or anything like that. But I do think it's really important to be at the forefront of like the external customers and understanding what people like and partners and your customers are saying about your product. So I do encourage people to get some type of sales experience because I do think it's really important from a marketing side to be able to like communicate better and understand like who you're actually selling to. And so yes, it was a way to get a foot in the door into Google, but it was also like I was actively looking for sales.
Okay. I think that's really great advice that your dad gave you. My dad also told me something similar. I remember I did sales out of college and I hated it, but he's like, once you do this, you know, it's going to help you in so many areas in your life. And so I think that's a really good way to kind of look at it as a way to kind of build necessary skills to help you with the longevity and like thinking of your career long term. So you had this role for a little while. I don't think I have like the full story on your LinkedIn of like everywhere kind of you went, but
Yeah.
how did you start to kind of make this switch at Google from doing sales, kind of transitioning more towards marketing?
Yeah, so I really wanted to go into more of a strategic type role. And so I applied to a bunch of roles in New York, and I got a role that was an account manager role working with entertainment brands. So I got to work with primarily like Viacom, and they're like the holding company for like Comedy Central and MTV. And at the time, like TV was still king.
Yeah.
Um, and so a lot of what they were doing was they were trying to drive viewership. So actual tune in, someone to like go to the TV on Tuesday at 8 p.m. and watch the show. And so what I had to do a lot of was understanding like who was watching their clips and their content on YouTube. I got to work on The Daily Show. Like we created like YouTube channels where they would upload clips every day about like little snippets, and then we'd understand like who's watching the snippets, and then how can we then target those specific users on YouTube to then drive them to watch live. A lot of what we did was like complementing the TV strategy with digital. It was a very interesting time because they were losing a lot of viewers and they were in the works of creating like streaming services for their specific brands. Like Peacock came out and like Disney Plus came out and like all these different streaming services. So then I moved into more of like a performance-based type marketing account management role where I drove a lot of like subscriber growth. So I got to do like the awareness type stuff with
Yeah.
a lot of like the viewership, and then I moved into more of like driving LTV, driving subscriber growth, and all of that.
Super interesting. I want to dive deeper into that, but before I do, can you share some insight around switching roles at a company, especially something like Google? And you also mentioned that you were in Ann Arbor
Yeah.
this new role took you to New York. And so I know a lot of us, or you at one point in your career, you may find yourself in a role at a company and you may love the company, but you may not really feel like you fit in that role. So what advice do you have for making an internal switch at a company?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of what I did was internally network. A lot of it was networking. A lot of it was setting up coffee chats. Like Google had a very inclusive culture where you could just like put time on a calendar. And so I did identify like specific people that I wanted to talk to, identified certain like roles and teams that I wanted to talk to. So a lot of it was just like setting up coffee chats and then ensuring that you were top of mind to these people when they then had to hire roles, which is exactly what happened. Um, I do think I know we were talking about this before, but like putting your time in, quote unquote, like sometimes is necessary in order to get to like the place and the role that you want to be to like get to next. In my case, it was like going to sales entry level role for a year and a half and then going to like the role that I wanted to afterwards. And so it may not necessarily be in like the glamorous New York. It brought me to Ann Arbor, Michigan, but I still am very grateful for my time there and like met amazing people and was able to network a lot. But yeah, that's the advice I would say to anyone listening.
So internal networking and
Yeah.
making sure you're top of mind for these people. What advice? So let's say I'm looking to make a move. I put some time on some people's calendars. What should I do? Like, I only have 20 or 30 minutes with this person. What questions am I asking? Like, how am I making sure that I'm standing out in this coffee chat?
Definitely asking them what they do and what the team does. People love talking about what they do. So that is number one. Number two is just like showing that you're extremely interested and that you're willing to like put in the time and then also ask them like what skills do you as a candidate need to know? Like I like if someone is like, we're in the beauty industry and we work with beauty clients, but like we really want someone that has experience like working with X specific product or like that knows about this specific like analytics type measurement and like really learning it and like showing like, okay, I'm being proactive about learning the skills. Because you're ultimately going to be put against other candidates that like have those skills and like have those technical requirements. So I would say that's the first thing. The second thing is just understanding like what type of candidate they're looking for. And then just talking about your overall like experience and like linking it to that specific role. I don't think like boasting about your role the whole time is like your current experience is the right way to go. I do think you want to make sure that you're also letting the person talk is that's also very important.
I love that. I always get that advice too. Is like everyone loves talking about themselves, especially in interviews. There is research that shows that if you get the more the interviewer talks about themselves, the more they like you as a candidate, which seems so backwards, but
Yeah.
it's so true.
Yeah.
So okay, so ask them questions about themselves, like what do you do? What's your role? I also always believe like older people do enjoy mentoring younger people, like they want to like give advice and stuff like
Yeah.
that. I think it's always good to give them that opportunity, and then asking them what they're looking for in the role, and like making sure that, or on their team, and making sure that if you kind of meet some of those qualifications, you're kind of like, oh yeah, I do have experience with that. That's great to know. We're kind of like showcasing that, but not fully selling yourself on them.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
I
Okay.
mean, definitely sell yourself, like
Okay.
obviously. But you also want to make sure that you don't just like go into the conversation and you're like, this is why I'd be a great fit when there's not even like a role open on the team. It's more
Yeah.
just like, oh, like these are the projects that I'm working on. These are the passion projects that I'm working on. Like the great thing about Google is like there was these amazing opportunities where you could do 20% projects. So you could essentially reach out to anybody on any team and be like, hey, do you have anything that I could work on? And so if you're doing that and you're being proactive and you're learning new skills via these like 20% projects, that definitely shows that you're just interested and that also helps you become more like a well-rounded candidate that has different like types of experience and project work.
Yes. Okay. And one of the other things that you had mentioned to me was how some of your lateral passion projects have helped you in your career kind of more than some of those promotions. So can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so I think there's two very notable ones at Google. The first is I was working on this YouTube experimentation team. It's called the Unskippable Labs, basically, so you don't skip an ad. And what they did is they would essentially like do a lot of experimentation on YouTube to understand the ads that people actually liked watching. And I was really lucky because I was working on an entertainment brand. And so a lot of it were like trailers, but it was like, how can we change trailers to make them more engaging? So those first 5 seconds, like start at the climax instead of just like how a typical trailer starts with like the title coming out. Like many different like ways that, again, art and science. And so because of that, I was working on the team and I was trying to move to Mexico City at the time. And so a Mexico City team reached out to me and was like, look, we really need help in the market. We're still really selling against like traditional media TV. Like we really need to increase our YouTube presence here in the country. And so I was able to go to Mexico City for 3 months as like a rotation and just like help people put together experimentation. I worked very closely with auto and CPG brands there. And so had a great time. And that basically kind of just taught me that I really want to do something a bit more art and science based, that I loved the like strategy and experimentation and data driven part of that. I didn't end up staying in the country, but yeah, nonetheless, like loved working there and loved getting like international, like global experience in Mexico, which was awesome. And then I think the second one was most like the one that really like helped me come to my like help me figure out that I wanted to do product marketing. During COVID, I so at Google there's this thing called Area 120, which are essentially any Google employee can like pitch a specific idea they have, and they can get funding as like a founder to put together an idea. And so I found this really cool team that was putting together a type of like essentially what the product did was that you would take a picture every day and you would deem a meal as either like a good or bad, like cheat or not cheat. That was like the first prototype. But again, they basically wanted to compete against like a Noom or Meal Pal, or where you essentially have to like input all of your calories and your amounts. And so what this technology was going to start doing is it was going to start counting macros and micros on your plate and start using like machine learning to help figure out like your overall diet and nutrition. I was like at the start of it. And so the first project was basically like finding partners that would like partner with us and like gym and like-minded like wellness brands. And so a lot of the work was around like positioning and like audience segmentation, which is one of the main tasks for product marketers to figure out like what type of like product fit would this specific new product feature or product have. And so after doing all of that work, I was like, wow, I really like this. Like this is super fun. Like finding partners was also fun, but I was really into like the positioning and the like audience like segmentation part that I then became super passionate about like the wellness and like that type of like food space, which led me to like find Sweetgreen and start
Yeah.
applying to lots of roles outside of Google.
That is so interesting. And then, so are these projects that you were doing at Google, this is like in addition to what you were doing full time?
Yeah.
Okay. Were
Yes.
you just like super busy all the time?
I mean, I was, but it didn't necessarily like it. I don't know, like for me, it didn't feel like extra work. It just felt like, oh, this is like something fun and
Yeah.
cool. And yeah, it does take up a lot more time, but I had already been in the role for a while, like my current role, and I was like looking for what I wanted to do. And this
Mhm.
was a really great way to just understand what I wanted to do, like work on a different project without like having to commit to like a new full-time role, if that makes sense.
Yes. And I like that it didn't feel like work because that's kind of like when you know you're onto something that you really like or you're really passionate about when it doesn't feel like a burden or like, you know, feels like something that's fun or something where you're getting to like tap into your creativity. And so I'm also curious, did that app, does it exist now?
So they ended up rolling it into Fitbit. Yeah,
Okay.
that's all I know. That's all I
Okay.
can share.
I was like, that sounds a lot easier. When I feel like when I was younger, I was like more into like counting all my calories and stuff. I'm not a big proponent of that for myself
Yeah,
anymore.
no.
But I can imagine like how much easier that would have been just to like take a picture of your plate and then not have to like actually individually go in and like pick
Yeah,
everything.
yeah.
Um, okay, so this is kind of where you're discovering it's okay, that makes like a lot of sense and ended up at Secret next. So here you're kind of discovering that you like product marketing, you're enjoying this like health and wellness space. And so is this kind of when you started to apply to other jobs and look elsewhere?
Yes, I primarily looked in, I mean, I was kind of like interested in a bunch of things, but like mostly the marriage of like food, tech, was also looking at like agro tech, was looking at like cannabis tech. I was looking at a bunch of like different, but like mostly like tech. And then yeah, I loved like that Sweetgreen had like an app component. It was also like very B2C. I really wanted to do more B2C to initially like get into like the PMM world.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, that's how Sweetgreen came about. And I went to Georgetown, so I knew the brand from Georgetown. And yeah, very interesting to go from a very big company to a founder-led company.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been very fun. It's been very interesting, very different.
Yes. How many employees are at Sweetgreen?
Less than 200.
Oh wow.
Corporate,
Really?
yes. Corporate, yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. 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 I'm imagining all the
Yeah.
stores. It's much
Yeah.
larger. Interesting. Okay. So why did you decide that you couldn't be a product marketer at Google? How come you decided that you needed, because you were there for a really, really long time. So what kind of made you realize, like, I think my journey here at Google's done?
I really needed to understand what else was there besides Google. There are definitely people that stay at Google for life. However, I really needed to try something else and go to a smaller company, go to more of like a growth company. Not that Google's not in the growth stage, but I just think that I was in a division where yes, it was growing, but it wasn't as like agile or like things kind of just like worked and like you had a process and I really wanted to go to something like very new and somewhere I could just have a bit more scope. As a I think as a product marketer at Google, there's like, for example, like 20 product marketers on one product, like a Google search versus at Sweetgreen, you own the whole product. So I really wanted to do PMM at a smaller company initially first.
So I think another big decision you make with your career is the size of the company, that you're going to work for. Is it, big company like Google or like a big mega corporation? Are you going for a very small like indie startup that has like 20 employees? Are you going for something kind of like where you're at that's like in the middle, like larger than a tiny startup, but still very much in that growth stage? I know you kind of mentioned that big comparison of really getting to have ownership over the product. Is there anything else you've kind of noticed that's really different, whether it's like good or bad, kind of comparing working at Google and now to more of a smaller company?
Um, you don't have as many resources at a smaller company. I
Mm.
would say like at Google, you had like a specific analytics person on every team. Like that doesn't exist at Sweetgreen. You have like maybe like two people for the whole company. So you learn to do things by yourself. It's very much like teach a man how to fish and he'll fish forever. So that part was like it was definitely like not a hurdle, but it was like a challenge. Like, oh wow, I've never had to like pull this specific type of data with a query. Like that's awesome. Like at
Mm.
Google, we would just have a dashboard for it. And so I think it's definitely an important skill to have to like learn how to do a lot of things that at Google, like you could just like click a button and you would get it. So yeah, I think it's like definitely positive change. I think also being at a smaller company, you see a lot of like the fruits of your labor. For example, and you also can like make decisions and people like you're owning it, so you have to make the decision essentially. So I wouldn't say there's as much like decision like lines of decision making as there is like in a larger company. I think also in a larger company like Google, it's all about scale. So it's like how can we create a specific process or put together a specific document that can then scale to many different teams versus at Sweetgreen, it's like it's just you're just creating it for Sweetgreen. So that was also like very different and very interesting to learn.
Did it feel more like freeing almost going to Sweetgreen, or did it feel like, I mean, also maybe a combination of like a little bit scarier where maybe at Google you had more checks and balances to kind of ensure what you were doing was right, but like here it's like, we're fully trusting you, like it's all on you. Like did some fear come with this switch at all?
Yeah, I mean, at Google, I did have a lot of responsibility because I was like running people's campaigns, like very large campaigns. So like in that sense, it was pretty similar. However,
Okay.
at Sweetgreen, I would say the difference is you're like a at Google, you're like a like you're one of like 100K.
Mhm.
It's just a huge company versus at Sweetgreen, like everyone knows who you are.
Yeah.
Oh, that's the person you need to like Slack to like get this specific answer. Versus at Google, like, yes, there's a bit of that, but like it's such a big company that like you don't necessarily need to be that one person for this specific answer. At least I wasn't on
Mhm.
the sales team. And so that has been a bit different. Like being like a small fish in a like
Yeah.
smaller, I don't know the analogy, I'm gonna mess it up, but you know what I mean.
Yes. And I know it's like hard because Google and Sweetgreen are they're not even like competitors. So it's not like I'm trying to compare them that way, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
just more
yeah.
like it's interesting. And since you were at Google for so long, that's like obviously I've never worked at Google, so I can't speak to like what it's like, but I'm just like imagining like that being a very, a big change of like going to, a
Yeah,
different type of company and
it's
everything.
definitely a big change.
Yeah. So I know you touched on your role a little bit here within product marketing. And so when you started at Sweetgreen, you were a product marketing manager. Was that a lateral move for you? Was that a growth move from you from where you were at Google?
It was, I mean, it was a completely different role. A lot of the skills were transferable, I would say. So I was able to transfer some of the skills. However, yeah, it was definitely a lateral move. It wasn't like me moving up in like pay or anything like that. I just really wanted to get in the product marketing world. So I even like took a pay cut for it and really wanted to understand and learn about product marketing. Um, so yeah, it was very much lateral.
Okay. But here you're thinking long term in your career of like knowing that, for you to make more later down or for you to be able to like be happy where you are, that this is kind of the right move for you to
Yeah.
make.
Yes.
So outside of working in product marketing and working at Sweetgreen, what are some things that you enjoy doing in your personal life?
Yeah, I love activities. My friends make fun of me all the time, but I have been taking improv this whole year. I started in January. They just opened a second city here in New York. So I've been taking it and it's so fun because it's just a great way to become like very silly and just a great creative outlet to like in improv you really need to learn how to listen because you're listening to your like partner's cue, you're listening to what they're saying. You need to then like there's this thing called yes and. So it's all about like making your partner be the best version of themselves on stage. And so if I say something to you, then you would like yes the specific statement and you would add something else so that I could then build off again. So I think it's just a great like way to like collaborate with people and to just like be very silly. Like a lot of the things that come out of people's mouths are just hilarious and it's just very fun. And yeah, I highly recommend it to everyone. I've been telling everyone to take improv.
I love that. It's so funny, Alexa. I interviewed Ashley Vargas. She is currently at Google. She's a couple episodes ago, but she also did improv. Is this like a Google thing now that like the Google
Maybe.
employees are going and taking improv? You're the only two that have ever told me that you guys do improv.
It's so fun. I really, really recommend doing. You don't even need to be like funny. You don't need to be funny at all. It just ends up being funny.
Oh my God. And then, so is the class, so you're taking it just for fun? Um,
I'm taking it for fun. However, there are people in the class who are actors and who are
really?
doing it for stand up and who like go to like improv and like do improv jams and all of that. I'm taking it for fun. So
Okay.
I
And are other people like, so is it intimidating being there with people that are trying to be actors, or were a lot of people like you taking it just for fun?
it's definitely intimidating.
Okay.
Um, the first level was not as intimidating. Now, as you go to like level 2, level 3, that's when you're like dealing with like more serious actors. It
So
can
you're
be very
advanced.
intimidating.
So you've been there for some time.
Yeah, it's really
Well,
fun. I'm definitely not a serious actor, but you cannot be shy. If you're shy, like you just can't. I mean, it's really hard to, but I remember a lot of people in my first class were very shy. And then as you start seeing them after like 3 months, you're like, oh, wow, that person really changed. Like their whole
yeah.
personality is different. And so it's also very cool to see people's like growth and development that way.
Yeah, I'm always been super interested in taking one too because I think it would help a lot with just feeling more comfortable with yourself and with confidence. What is the like craziest thing you've had to do at improv class?
Oh, okay. So the other day we had a musical theater class and the person that was like in charge of like making the music he was an amazing musician. However, we had to do a lot of like singing of songs and understanding that when you say things with a certain voice really high or really low, like it can change the way that your personality is, or it can change completely the way that someone is like understanding you, or perceiving you. So a lot of it was like singing, and I'm a terrible singer. And so I was very intimidated and like very embarrassed. But once you just have to like go with it. So we had to like sing a lot of songs, or we had to like do things in like specific beats of like jazz or country. And so yeah, that was not crazy, but it was very hard and very intimidating.
Yeah. Oh my God. I can't decide if this is like sounds fun to me or like my worst nightmare.
Maybe.
Yeah, singing has to be like very scary, especially I know for me, I'm not like I'm just not a singer. And so I'll sing with like everyone else is singing and no one can hear my voice, but having to like sing and have everyone hear me would be definitely outside my comfort zone.
And then making it up on the fly. That's even the harder part.
Oh wait, so you're coming up with the lyrics on the fly?
Yes.
Oh my God. Oh my gosh.
But you can essentially sing anything, so you know.
Yeah. That's yeah, yeah, okay. I'm gonna like look into it because now when she told me about it, she said that she actually took it to help her with leadership. She was having like a leadership role at Google. She's like, I took it to help like give me more confidence, like and be better at public speaking. And so, and I could totally see how that would absolutely help you.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely intimidating and a little bit scary.
Yeah. There's this thing in improv that's like commit to the bit. So once something comes out of your mouth, you just have to commit and you just have to go for it, which I think is very much true of like when you're in a presentation or like,
Mhm.
yes, obviously you have data and you have things that are like backing up your specific recommendation or whatever that you're presenting. But once something comes out of your mouth, you're like, okay, I need to commit and I need to talk through it and I need to help myself out here. So it definitely does help with public speaking, I would say.
Yes, I think about that with the podcast too sometimes is sometimes I've asked questions not knowing what the answer will be. And then if it throws the guest off or something, then I commit to the bit. I have to like, figure out how to make
Yeah.
it work or how to navigate, which like you're saying is true with, any type of, yeah, if you're presenting something or even if you're in an interview, I feel like it would be a very helpful skill to have.
Yeah. So you're improvising every day, every a single episode.
Yes, yes. And I have noticed that over time I do improve, but I imagine if I had taken an improv class in season one of Sky Society podcast, that maybe I would have grown a little faster.
Yeah.
So outside of improv, any other activities you do since your friends are always teasing you for them?
So I did pottery for a little bit, which was really fun in the winter. I mean, New York winters they're rough. They can be rough. And so I always try to have some type of activity. I once took a continuing educations course at NYU where I learned about like all of the contemporary architecture. And so every single class was like a different walking tour of a specific area of New York. Yeah, I definitely try to do a lot of like classes. I mean, any city has like a vast array of very cool things that you can learn. And so I love to stay curious and keep learning.
Yeah, that's a fun way, I think, to like stay busy and have a full life outside of your job too. When you moved from Michigan to New York, did you know anybody in New York when you first moved?
Yeah, I had a lot of college friends, a lot of high
Okay.
school friends. I actually didn't know anybody in Michigan. That was the
Oh,
harder
really?
one.
Oh, okay. So coming back to New York was coming like a little bit more into like a safe place of where you knew more
Yes,
people.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how long have you been there now?
Almost 8 years, a long time.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah,
That's
I'm in New York.
crazy.
Almost. They say 10 years, apparently.
Wait, you say 10 years or they say 10 years?
People say like once you've reached 10 years,
Uh,
you're an official New Yorker. So we'll
yeah,
see.
I've lived in Austin for 3 years, but I still will lie. And anyone asks me where I'm from, I'll say Austin instead of California. Just because it's easier sometimes. All right, Alexa. So we've kind of come over through Google, how you kind of found your way within product marketing, and always curious to hear what marketing girlies are doing on the side outside of their job, which I love. What advice would you give to someone who's earlier in their career or considering a career in product marketing? Any advice you'd give to any young woman in marketing?
Yeah, I think your network is really important. I think, and it's becoming increasingly important as there's just an increase of layoffs and there's just like a lot of like competition now for jobs. I think getting referred for a role is like very important in getting you an interview at that specific company. So don't be scared to like cold reach out to people on LinkedIn. I a lot of people do it to me and I answer and I'll like reach out to them and like anytime they want a referral, I'll definitely refer them. And so yeah, I think like don't be scared to reach out and ask people for like those like virtual coffee chats. Like people are always happy to help, like use your network, use your alumni network, like reach out to you. You probably have the most amazing network. So yeah, I definitely think like use your network and build it.
And what advice would you give for someone who's like nervous to send that first message to someone? Anything that makes like a good outreach message that maybe like makes you more inclined to respond?
I think if it's super casual and just like nice and friendly and it's kind of like, hey, I would love to learn about X. I am currently doing this. Like make it very like to the point, very direct, and like just make it like I would love to get 15 minutes of your time. Like, does X date work? I think when I'm less inclined to answer is when they like send a whole paragraph and they're like, this is my life. So that I don't think is like that useful. I think you want to be like very to the point, succinct, and just like very much like I'd love to chat for 15 minutes and that's it. Like make sure that you're not taking up too much of their time, but you're also coming with questions and yeah, and you're just being very like direct and honest.
Yeah, I love that. Okay. Well, Alexa, thank you so much for an incredible conversation. It has been very inspiring going through your journey, and I learned so much. So thank you so much for coming on Marketing Girly.
Thank you so much. It was great talking to you today.